Welcome, CDFI women. I am Hannah Vargason at Natural Capital Investment Fund, one of the volunteers on the CDFI Women's Network Advisory Group. Thank you for joining us for our first official program offering. Thank you for sticking with us over the past 2 years as we've gotten the network up and running, and really for your petition for this space and your advocacy for equity and inclusion. So we intend for this to be the first of many webinars, convenings, and resources aimed at expanding opportunities for women in our industry. Today's program will be recorded, and we will send it to everyone who registered and post it to CDFI Connect and social media. So you can go back to it when you're preparing for your annual review. And please do share it with our other colleagues who couldn't be on today. But this will be banked in our large library of resources that we hope to develop. So indeed, the timing is perfect for this presentation, and we're excited to have executive business coach Jamie Lee present her Art of Negotiation or Negotiating training. Jamie actually customized the program for us, though, customized it to women or for women in the CDFI industry specifically. She actually interviewed 4 diverse CDFI women as a part of her preparation to develop an understanding of our industry and the unique challenges that women face in our industry. And we set her up with women to include perspectives from different geographies, sectors, career stages, and ethnic backgrounds. So I first want to thank those women for their contributions. Crystal Cornelius, Executive Director of OISA, a support organization for Native CDFIs. Kate Barr, President and CEO at Propel Nonprofits located in Minnesota. Tara Campbell, Lending Manager at Community Affordable Housing Equity Corporation in Raleigh, North Carolina. And Adria Moss, Associate Director of Pacific Community Ventures Loan Fund based in Oakland, California. I also want to thank Imani Darden at LISC for identifying and engaging Jamie, as well as our team behind the logistics and network operations generally, including Caprice Pratt, Spruce Root Loan Fund, Lily Levitt, Craftsman Technology Group, Eliza Jin, Partners for the Common Good, Amanda Ickard, and Sarah Firestein at LISC. And thanks to OFN for letting us use their webinar platform today. Finally, and not least, we want to acknowledge Fund Community Institute for their generous sponsorship of today's program. Only with their support would we be able to provide a professional training experience. So thank you to Fund Community Institute and their team. And now back to the topic of the hour and our trainer, Jamie Lee. So Jamie is self-described to be on a mission to build $1 million coaching business that helps women thrive professionally, financially, and emotionally. We could not have dreamed up a better trainer if we tried. She is inspired by her immigrant mother, who single-handedly raised 3 daughters while running a small business in America. As an executive coach and speaker, Jamie specializes in negotiation, leadership, and self-advocacy for women who want to rise. She has worked with leading institutions, including the Association of Corporate Councils, Global Network of Women Peace Builders, Smith College, and JP Morgan Chase. Her client testimonials include words and phrases such as 26% salary increase, $20,000 more, and 100% recommend her, as well as holy camoli. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Jamie.
Well, thank you so much, Hannah, Sarah, CDFI, and all the wonderful women I interviewed who provided incredible insights. Some of you, I'm like, wait, you could teach this. Welcome to the Art of Negotiating. I have winning strategies for women that I want to share with you today. As Hannah introduced me, I've been working as an executive coach for 3 years. I've been doing negotiation training for women for the past 6 years, and these are some of the best strategies that I have learned myself, applied myself, and helped my clients with implementing. And I love that you read some of the testimonials. Thank you. And I want to celebrate that this year has been a great year. Some of my clients have used these strategies to improve their offers by up to $100,000 and $200,000. So, I focus on self-confidence. and strategies for self-advocacy. I am based in New York City. I was born in South Korea and I immigrated to America in 1989. That was 30 years ago. I was 7 years old, so you all know how old I am. And as Hannah said, I am inspired by my own mother who is on this photo. I'm the monkey in the middle there. And in fact, when she immigrated to America, she was about the age that I am now, which gives me kind of chills to think about. There was another girl, another baby girl at that time. So we had three, she had three daughters. I'm one of three. And growing up, as an immigrant kid, a latchkey immigrant kid in New Jersey, my mom was always telling me, Jamie, you gotta speak up. You gotta ask for what you want. You gotta be brave. And being one of the three kids who actually spoke English better than the rest of us, she would ask me to negotiate on behalf of her, you know, with Con Edison, you know, call of the utilities company. And so she was encouraging me to be a negotiator, be an advocate from a very young age. And, you know, I'll be totally honest with you. Growing up, I didn't always appreciate it. I kind of resented it. I kind of resented this advice. Why? Because I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be the nice, quiet girl that people like, that is not called bossy or, you know, a witch with a B. And it wasn't until I got into the working world and found out the hard way that she was absolutely right. 10 years ago, I used to work as a hedge fund analyst. And one day I found out accidentally that I was making 50% of the going market range. That hurt. And that was the moment I realized these negotiation advocacy skills, I gotta learn them. I can be book smart, but if I don't know how to speak up and advocate for what I want and negotiate for the salary that I know I deserve, then I'm gonna fall behind. It's on me to learn those skills. And that's when I started to studying these strategies, implementing them in my life. And, you know, eventually over time, I decided this is what I want to do. This is what I want to help women with. By the way, did you know that Clinton Global Institute found that when women around the world earn money, they invest 90% of it back into their families, back into their communities. Whereas for men, it was about 45%. It was about half of that. And so sometimes my clients tell me, my women friends tell me that they hesitate to negotiate for themselves because they don't want to be selfish. And I want to offer that from my own experience and from research, we know that when women win, families win. That's what my mom showed me. That's what the research shows. That when you win, you make an impact. You invest it back. When you are happy, people around you are happy. When you are supported, you support the people around you. And I think that's, you know, that's what CDFI is all about, right? It's helping the communities to be abundant so that they can have a positive ripple effect on the communities around them. And it starts with you. It starts with women believing in ourselves, believing in our worth, and asking for what we want in a confident way. So having said that, I want to, you know, set the agenda for the next 50 or so minutes. It's not a lot of time, but what I want to offer is very powerful, but simple. First, I want to share with you proven mental primes that help women negotiators improve their outcomes. This is, again, based on research. Some of you asked me, how can you become more comfortable negotiating? And I think these are strategies that can really have an impact on your mind, on your emotions, and therefore your actions, and therefore your results. And also, we're just going to help you get started on building a communication strategy. Like I want you to, maybe grab a, pen and paper right now and think about like how you can implement the action steps that I suggest and how you can apply them to you and your career. We're really smart here. Everyone who's on this webinar, super smart, but super smart people have a tendency to fall into the pitfall of like, yeah, I know, that's great. And they don't take action because they think, oh, it's all good information, but it doesn't apply to me, right? So if it doesn't apply to you, if you don't apply it to your life, then it doesn't have a chance of changing your outcome. So I want to challenge you to just take one thing. There's going to be a lot of things I'm going to share with you. Just take one and test it out after the webinar and see whether it works for you. Test it out for yourself. And finally, we're going to talk about actionable tips, actionable scripts. And just as an FYI, I know that negotiation happens in many different contexts and situations, but for the sake of demonstration, I have prepared some scripts for salary conversation. But I don't want you to get fixated on the exact words. I want you to like watch and think about why. Think about the framework. Think about the mindset behind those words so that you can adapt it to your situation, so that you can rewrite it in your own voice and make it come to life. All right, so that's what we're gonna do. Just three key objectives. So I have a question for the group here. See, we have like, wow, we have like up to almost 100 people here. This is very exciting. Before you negotiate, how do you get yourself into a winning mindset? And I would love to, I would love for you to type in your response directly into the chat box so that, we can share your wisdom. Okay, so we have do my research, feel confident in my ask. Yeah, doing your research, that's number one. That was the reason why 10 years ago, I ended up making 50% of the going market range because I didn't do my research, right? Research. Try to take up more physical space. Love that. Yes, power pose, right? Meditate. Yeah, meditation. I also do meditation before high stakes conversations to calm my nerves, get myself centered and grounded, remind myself of what I've accomplished. Excellent. Yeah, that's really good. Anyone else? Feel free to type it into the chat box. By the way, I love this quote from the Greek poet Archilochus. He says that you don't rise to your level of expectation. You fall to the level of your training. And another negotiation expert, his name is Chris Voss. He's written a bestseller book called Never Split the Difference. If you haven't checked it out, please do so. He also says in negotiation, you fall to the level of your preparation. Right? It's a variation on this idea. So when you prepare, it sets you up for success. And how you prepare mentally in your mindset, I think, is huge because how you think influences how you feel, and how you feel influences how you do, and how you do is create the result. Some other strategies that's coming in: practice. Absolutely, practice it out loud. Remind myself of what I've accomplished. Get advice from peers. Yes. Share strategy with trusted colleague. Yes, absolutely. These are all really, really good strategies. Excellent. So I want to share with you that there are two very specific mental primes that experts at Carnegie Mellon and Stony Brook University have verified through social research, through a study, that when women, when they do these two mental primes before they negotiate, their outcomes actually improved. And they did a blind study, and they also had men do the same mental primes, but for some reason, their outcomes did not improve as much as for women. So the first thing is remind yourself before you negotiate, remind yourself 3 times you advocated in the past, 3 times you were assertive, 3 times you were brave and you initiated something, or maybe 3 times you took a stand for what you believe in. Yeah. For me, when I think about this, what comes to my mind is years ago when I was a high school student. I was not as socially outgoing as I am now. So by the time senior prom rolled around, I didn't have a lot of guy friends I could ask. But undaunted by my lack of popularity, I proceeded to ask 5 most harmless looking boys out to the prom. And they all said no. They were so kind. It was the best thing, actually, because I ended up going to the prom alone. I went stag. I borrowed my sister's prom dress and had the most wonderful time. I didn't have to worry about my date. Like, what is he thinking? Is it going to be weird afterwards? No, I was carefree. I got to dance and I felt awesome. And this experience, even before I knew a thing about advocating for myself, even before I knew a thing about, effective workplace strategies, I showed myself that I can ask for what I want, I can hear no, and I can still show up for me in an authentic way that serves me. Yeah, and I'm reminded, yeah, that's what I'm capable of. That's who I am. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who has a story like that. You have a story like that in you as well. So I want you to think about, like, in my life, when have I stood up for myself? And remind yourself actively before you negotiate. Also, the second thing is really big. Prepare for the negotiation as if you're going to negotiate for your best friend. Social scientists say that women are conditioned, women are programmed, women are socialized to be other-oriented. Like, we're socialized to think about other people more than we think about our needs. And so we're going to turn that socialization on its head and say, okay, what if I'm going to negotiate for my best friend? So I have a exercise, a really simple exercise that you can do before you negotiate for what you want, before you go to advocate for you. I want you to think about, who is my best friend? Write their name down on paper, and then from that person's perspective, if we were to go and borrow that person's brain and ask, how would you describe the value of me? How would you describe the future potential of me? Like, how would they describe that? How would they go to bat for you? How would they advocate for what you are capable of? Write it down. And then ask yourself, what if this is correct? What if they are completely right? Because I know when we hear nice things from other people, a lot of us who, have this social conditioning are tempted to discount, to deflect, say, no, I'm not that great. No, I'm not that amazing. But pause it and say, what if the things that my best friend say, if they were to advocate for me, what if they are right? And I found this to be a really powerful exercise, not just for me, but for my clients when they go to advocate for their value, when they go to interview, when they think about, okay, how do I think about me from the perspective of somebody who really knows me and knows what I'm capable of. So I invite you to take this work further. I invite you to reach out to people and you trust. Ask them, how would you describe me? How would you describe the value I bring? And just listen. Okay, so I'm curious to know how you define negotiation. I'd love to hear from you, what is your definition of negotiation? We've already been talking about it for a while, but I'm curious because everyone defines negotiation differently. Excellent. Trying to expand the pie. That's a really good definition. It's like win-win negotiation, right? It's not just about you taking the bigger slice. It's about, how do we expand that overall pie? Yeah, that's a really good one. And you do that by identifying the interest, the shared interest of both sides, and try to see how can we satisfy the underlying whys, not just what people say they want, but like try to find out why do people want what they want. Yeah, so it's collaboration, it's about making compromises. These are all good. Okay, yeah. All right, so okay, so let us proceed. So here is my definition of negotiation. Negotiation is a communication discipline. It's simply a conversation where you have the intention of reaching agreement, and everyone in that conversation has the right to say no. And I chose this photo intentionally because what you see in this photo are two people having coffee. They're having a conversation. So I want you to think about the next time you negotiate, the next time you try to ask for what you want, think about it from the perspective of a conversation. If I were to approach this as if we're just grabbing coffee, as if this was a casual conversation, how might I approach it? Like, how might I, establish common ground? How might I break the ice and, share some information and make it, make it a casual, make it a friendly, a collegial conversation? The reason why I bring this up is because so often when people hear the word negotiation, they think of confrontation. They think of a transactional exchange. I was born in South Korea, where every Sunday I would go to the street market with my mom, and I saw her haggle, and I thought that was negotiating, and I thought it was a fun game. And it wasn't until I learned more about interest-based negotiation and realized that the best way to approach this negotiation is to not be like, oh my God, I gotta get what I want, but being genuinely curious, to listen, engage, share information, provide feedback, come up with solutions. Basically, it's like a coffee chat, or think of like when you're trying to problem solve, if you're trying to invite people to a casual get together in your house, how can you bring that element of openness, of conversation to your communication? So with that said, let's think more strategically about what it means to communicate. So there are just 4 elements of communication, 4 fundamental elements in communication. First of all, what you mean. What is your intention? What are you thinking before you say it? Because how you say it is the second thing. The third element is what they hear from what you've said and how you've said it. According to research, only about 14% of what you say is retained by your audience. I know that's kind of funny because we're at a webinar, and that makes me realize, you may only remember about 14% of what you hear at this webinar. That's okay. But of what people hear, 14% of what they hear, they take that and then they filter it through their own perception, their own beliefs, and they make it mean something. And by the time, it's kind of like a game of telephone, right? By the time they have interpreted what they've heard, it could be something different. It could be what you've said. It could be what you meant. But ultimately, here's the thing. You're not in control. You're not in control of what they hear. You're not in control of what they make it mean. So what does this mean for us? It means that we should be ruthlessly focused on what we can control, what we mean, how we think about what we mean, and how we say it. How do we show up? How do we articulate it with our tone, with our body language? Somebody said one great way to put yourself in a winning mindset is to take up space, right? Are you taking up space with your language, with your body, with your voice when you say what you say in a negotiation? In other words, are you conveying confidence? Are you conveying leadership potential? So that said, I'm just gonna let's let's apply this. Let's help you put this into action, okay? And what I mean is, I want you to take this opportunity to set a specific goal for the next time you are going to seek buy-in, for the next time you're going to ask for support. It might be the next annual review where you ask for a compensation review. It might be the next time you seek support or buy-in for a new idea, a new proposal that you believe will help add benefit, help add value to the communities that you serve. Or it could be when you seek support or help from partnerships. In one of the conversations that I've had with your senior leaders in the CDFI network, I learned that you not only negotiate internally, but you have to negotiate with foundations, with banks, with donors, with investors, right? So think about the next conversation that you will have to get that buy-in, to get that support, to get that yes. And I want you to pick one now. I want you to pick one for 2020, or maybe December. 2019 isn't over yet, right? I want you to set a specific goal, because what we're going to do is we're going to back solve. We're going to set a goal, and then we're going to come up with a strategy to help you get what you want. Get that yes, get that support, get that buy-in. So I'm curious, I want to ask people here, what is that next conversation that you will have? Is it an annual review? Is it a meeting? Is it a conversation with a potential partner, bank, investor? Again, if you know, if you have a general idea, please type it into the chat box. Okay. So I see people have some goals for the next year, for 2020, performance review, getting support, getting buy-in. Yeah, the more specific you are on what it is that you want, it totally helps. Take, for example, I have a client who works for this organization that is coming up with technical solutions. And what she would really love is to spearhead a solution to help people dealing with chronic pain. And for a client who work in the finance field, I know things that they really want to do is they want to just hit their performance goals and hit it out of the park, so that by the next time they have the conversation with their supervisor, their manager, they could come to the conversation and say, hey, I am hitting it out of the park. Could we have that conversation about updating my job description or updating my job title so that my title matches the scope of my responsibilities. I see somebody also, that is your goal as well, title change matching responsibility. Excellent. So the more specific you are, the better it is in terms of creating that strategy, fine-tuning it and then implementing it. Okay, excellent. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. So let's move on. So how do we get buy-in? I want to offer this incredible idea that I so wish I had known in advance. I so wish I had known this early in my career. It would have had a huge impact on my negotiation outcomes, but not only that, how I influence, how I lead, how I thrive in the workplace. It is called the 51% rule, and it is described in a great book called Politically Savvy by Joel DeLuca. Check it out. Joel DeLuca was this person who studied leadership in a scientific approach. And he surveyed leaders who were considered to be politically savvy, meaning they were ethical, but they were effective at getting buy-in in the workplace by their peers. And they were, they weren't being Machiavellian, they weren't being manipulative, but they were somehow very effective because they used and obeyed the 51% rule. And that is, before you go into that formal conversation before you have that official meeting with the decision maker, who maybe it's HR, maybe it's your hiring manager, maybe it's senior leader in your organization that you need to persuade to have your title changed or give you buy-in for your idea. So before you have that formal conversation with the decision maker, you want to back up, you want to identify who are the people whose buy-in is essential. And then make sure you have 51% of those decision makers already bought in, already familiar with your idea, so that by the time you have that formal conversation, it is no-brainer, it is no surprise. And what this takes is for you to engage in a lot of informal conversations with those decision makers, with those stakeholders. So the way I used to think about negotiation is I just build this like perfect pitch. Maybe I'll build a PowerPoint deck to demonstrate how I've delivered value, and I'll have a formal conversation with my hiring manager, and I will give a flawless presentation, and then they will be wowed by my presentation, and then of course I'll give you the promotion and raise you deserve because you're so amazing. And I have to say, I have given great presentations in the past, and I thought that is it. That is how I get the buy-in. That is how I get the promotion. And what do you think? Lo and behold, did I get that promotion? Did I get that recognition without engaging in informal, influencing conversations before the ask? And the answer is no. No. Flawless presentations, flawless pitches do not get you buy-in. It's informal conversation. People have to be already bought into the idea before you give the presentation. This takes legwork. This takes for you to strategically map out who are the decision makers. This takes legwork. Somebody I looked up to who worked in the financial industry, she worked in one of the huge banks, and what she did was before she engaged in conversation, she would go to LinkedIn and she would map out the hierarchy of people with whom she will be engaged in conversation. She would figure out, okay, who is the decision maker, who are support staff, and so whom do I need to focus on, and who do I reach out to before the conversation, the formal conversation, so that I can run my idea, my proposal by them, and they're already familiar, so they're comfortable with the idea. I have a client who did not know about the 51% rule. She sent a PowerPoint presentation to her boss before the formal conversation with the whole team, where she presented her ideas for the next quarter. And do you think that the boss read the PowerPoint? No, he didn't. And so by the time she gave the presentation, he didn't know, he wasn't familiar with the idea. And in fact, he was very irate, he was very upset, and the relationship never fully recovered. So the bottom line here is, yes, it takes extra legwork, and we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into that legwork in a minute. But you got to prepare. You fall to the level of your preparation, right? So you got to figure out who are the decision makers. How do I run my ideas by them informally? I give this presentation to another person who works for a global organization, a senior leader, and she says that her presentations aren't great, but what she does is she always gets buy-in before the presentation. She makes it a point to talk to people one by one and make sure they're comfortable with the idea. So by the time she gives the formal presentation, they're like, yeah, sure, great. What are the next steps? Remember, only 14% of what you say is retained. So it's really important. So the question is, how do you engage in informal conversations on raise or promotions? This is a great question. So you want to maybe have a check-in, an informal check-in. Another client, what she does is she has a standing check-in with her manager on a weekly basis. And this isn't, the weekly check-in isn't part of a formal quarterly review or anything like that. It's just, they just check in on a regular basis to make sure they're both on the same page. So that would be a great opportunity to informally let them know, hey, you know what, I'm really excited to grow in this role, and I'm really interested in learning what it would take for me to grow to the next level in this organization, right? So you want to give soft pitches, and when you tell them you want to grow, and they are bought in on the idea that you want to grow and that you can grow and that you can hit it out of the park, the raise will come. The raise question will follow naturally, because the more you do, the more you earn, right? Okay, so let's make this more specific. One thing I want you to do is think about, okay, I have a very specific goal. I want to make sure that my title matches my responsibility. I want to get buy-in on my new idea. When you're very specific and you're clear on the goal that you want to achieve in the future, now we can back solve for people who can help, who are the allies, who are mentors with prior experience in this specific situation, this specific topic. Maybe you can talk to people in your organization, or people who used to work in your organization. Ask them for feedback. What did it take for you to get promoted and get a raise? And also, there are influencers who have the ear of the decision maker. Influencers are not necessarily the decision maker, but people who have a relationship with the decision maker, or they're people the decision maker relies on, consults when it comes to making decisions. Who are they? Do you know them? Maybe it's the HR person, maybe it's your friend in HR, or maybe it's your friend in research and development, learning. I'm trying to think. Maybe there are other people that who have a relationship with the decision maker. And then there are sponsors who can go to bat for you. When it comes to getting promoted and getting raises, those decisions are made behind closed doors. So who are the people who will be behind those closed doors? And can you ask one or two or more of those people to go to bat for you, to advocate for you? A client asked me, can you have more than one sponsor? The answer is yes, absolutely. For me, I used to work in tech companies before I became a coach. And all of the decision makers were men. They just happened to be all men. The CEO, the COO, CRO, CTO. I was working as an operations director. So I was managing middle office tasks, reporting, accounting, HR. And it wasn't until the CTO had a chat with the CEO and the COO and said, you know what, Jamie should really be part of our daily senior management meetings, because our decisions are going to impact what she does on a daily basis. It wasn't until the CTO became my sponsor that I got to sit in on those meetings every day. So think about, for you, who are these people? I'd encourage you to do a mind map like this and try to identify as many people as possible. Start with the people you know. We often underestimate the power of networks that we already have, because people want to help. If you have a question, if you're not sure how to get help, people want to help. You can ask them for help. So I'm gonna, check in on the questions. So I try to identify people who can help, and then and if you don't know, try to establish a relationship with people who can help. Okay, so now I want to bring it even more tactical in terms of how you say it. How do you negotiate? One of the questions that was asked was, when do you negotiate? And I want to offer that the most dangerous negotiation that you can find yourself in is when you don't even realize you're in one, right? A lot of times people think negotiation is just about the money, but I want you to think from a different perspective, a wider perspective. What if your daily conversations at work, your informal conversations, they can be part of your influencing strategy. So by the time that you go to have that conversation about the money and the title, like it's kind of like second thought, okay? And so then question comes, how do you let the other side know that you want more or you want something different? How do you do it in a way that is sensitive to the relationship, that is not abrasive, that is respectful? So I have perfect script for this. And the script uses what I call a yes and strategy. So let's say, you know, at an annual review, you get some feedback, and or maybe you get some pushback on what you ask for. Instead of saying, okay, I hear you, but you don't understand. I've been doing so much work. I've been staying late for an entire year, and I've been doing X, Y, and Z. Instead of getting defensive with the but, I want to suggest, say, you know, I hear you. I appreciate your feedback. And I'm confident we'll be able to arrive at a solution that works for both sides. I hear you, and I want to keep having this conversation with you. And this is a really simple but powerful framework that has helped my clients negotiate their salary offers for a better offer. And I just gave this presentation for people who work in the biotech industry, and somebody came up to me afterwards and she said, you know what, I'm going to use this with my life partner at home, because we always disagree about something really minor, and we're always saying, yeah, but, and we're getting all like angsty. I'm going to try saying, I hear you, and here's a solution I suggest. And so imagine the impact that could have on your negotiation. So again, when I offer these scripts, think about how you can apply them to your situation. And basically the idea is, I hear you. And remember, people only hear about 14% of what you say. And what I have found to be true, and what my clients have found to be true, is that people don't hear you until they know they've been heard. And we know when we go into that, you know, review conversation, your boss, your supervisor, they will have feedback for you. They will have some suggestions. And so hear them out. Listen, say, yes, I hear you. And let's work towards a solution that's going to work for both of us. And I have suggestions. Would you like to hear it? Okay. So beyond the yes and, in an interest-based or win-win negotiation, we really want to make sure we know what it is that they want. We know what it is that drives the other side. We know, you know, what their fears are, what their desires are, what their, you know, potential objections are. And so in order to do that, make sure you ask, I'm going to come back to this. Make sure you ask W questions. Make sure you ask more W questions, which are open-ended diagnostic questions that start with who, what, where, when, why, how. According to Harvard Program on Negotiation, only about 10% of negotiators use open-ended diagnostic questions. And this is the underutilized weapon. It's so powerful, because when you ask open questions, W questions that are curious, that do not include, that do not imply an assumption, that are not yes or no questions, you get to invite them to share their thoughts, their world, their goals, their potential objections with you. And the more you know about what drives them, more power you have. Remember, insight, information, knowledge is power in a negotiation. And even if it's a very cut and dry, like, you know, how do we move forward with this data? you want to understand, like, how does your counterpart, how does your boss, your manager, your stakeholder, how do they think about this particular data point? I'm going to give you a very, very simple example. It is 74 degrees in the room that I'm in. You can know that for sure because you can read it in the thermostat. But 74 degrees can be comfortable for my life partner, and it could be, and I could think it's frigid in here. My mother can walk in and she'd be like, oh, it is so hot in here, right? So we don't know. We can't just assume that, you know, what we know as facts are interpreted by everyone to be the same facts. What you think is important to the organization may not be what your boss or your manager or your investor thinks is the most important thing. So you want to ask questions like, what's most important to you? And also, how do you define success for this role? And if they make you an offer or tell you something and you think, you know, it's not something that I'm really happy with, but instead of saying I'm not happy with it, just get curious and say, hey, I'm curious. How did you arrive at this number? What was your thought process? And also, if you encounter no, this is another opportunity to get even more curious, form your mouth into a W. This is something that my own negotiation mentor, Lisa Gates, taught me. And ask an open-ended diagnostic question. Ask a W question. What would make this a yes for you? Get more information, get more curious. It's going to be so tempting to get defensive when you encounter pushback. It's going to be really tempting to say things like, is this how you do business? Or are you trying to undermine me? Those are closed-ended questions because they can be answered with a yes or no. And they also imply a lot of assumptions about what the other side is thinking. So here's something that you can do. Before you negotiate, draft some open-ended diagnostic questions. Draft questions that start with these W words: how, what, when, where, who. And make sure those questions do not imply an assumption, that they do not include a bias. And ask them when you're in doubt, when you encounter impasse, when you just feel stuck. Ask open-ended diagnostic questions, get more information, and from the information that you gain, try to reframe, pivot, re-ask. It's a really powerful tool. And in fact, if you read the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, he explains how this is a tool that hostage negotiators who diffuse very dangerous individuals, this is the tool that they use. They just get curious. They just ask open questions. What are you thinking? What is going on? How do you want me to do this? Right? When you ask these open-ended questions, do not assume that these are ways to concede. You're not conceding anything. You're just getting curious. You're just trying to better understand their world, their thought process. And from there, once you have gained as much information about what the other side is thinking, then you have ammunition. Then you know how to frame for value in a really compelling way. And I want to offer, you know, you're showing up to work, you're getting the job done, you bring value. Your contributions have value. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there, right? So I want to suggest, make sure you keep a log of your past accomplishments. Everyone that I have interviewed for this and for, you know, previous engagements, people who feel confident in their ask, they keep a log. They feel ownership over their contributions, so they keep a log. I used to keep just a memo of all the things that I've done in my company and things that I was proud of, when I got praise, when there were key milestones achieved. I would just write it down, jot it down in that memo, so that by the time I had the one-on-one conversation with my boss, like I knew what to say. I knew what I was proud of. A couple years ago, a client wrote me and she said, you know, that was the best piece of advice, because I went to the annual review. I had 12 things on my accomplishments list. My boss brought 3. My boss could only remember 3 for me. So when I had the list, I could remind him or her of what I had accomplished. Beyond your past accomplishments, you also want to articulate your future potential, not just what you've done, but what you can do, what you are capable of, what you dream of doing, right? So because in negotiation, nothing changes in the past. We're trying to change how things are done or how things are agreed to in the future. So you also want to articulate the additional value you will bring in the future. And finally, how does it align to their interests, to their top priorities, to their goals? So I have some specific sample scripts to demonstrate how you can do that with language. So in this script, first you articulate, you remind your supervisor or boss of how you have added value. Here are a couple of key highlights. Here are some bullet points of how I added value in the past quarter. Would you agree I'm adding value? And by asking this question, you get buy-in. Say, yeah, of course you're adding value. We think you're doing a great job, is probably what they will say when you ask, would you agree I'm adding value? After you've demonstrated, reminded your boss of all the great things you've accomplished. Then you point to your future potential and you say, I look forward to using my strengths, my skills, my core competencies to help drive the team, help drive the mission goal of our organization, because I value collaboration, I value transparency, I value accuracy. This is just an example, but you can, use it. You can reframe it. You could reword it to fit your specific situation, and then you add, and that is why I'm asking for X. Okay, so the strategy is paint your past accomplishments, paint your future potential, let them know you value the same things that they value, and then you ask for what you want. So let's talk about doing that. It's called anchoring. When you tell them what you want, it's anchoring. Anchoring also works as a very powerful cognitive bias. Psychologists have found that when first piece of information enters your consciousness, that information will always influence the rest of your decision making, as long as that first piece of information was relevant. And when they do this research, they do it with numbers. They do it with irrelevant numbers. In one study, they asked the participants to guess the number of countries in Africa. And if they guessed higher, in the subsequent mock negotiation, they asked for a higher number. So it's really interesting how that numerical input, the first piece of information, has a huge impact on your negotiation outcomes. You've all been exposed to this. You're familiar with this, because if you like shopping, if you like discount shopping, like I do, you look at the price tag and you see that the original price was $1,000. And you're like, wow, this is really beautiful, valuable dress, and I could buy it for $500. What a bargain, right? So you've already been anchored with the original price, that your perception of value is higher because of that anchor of the original price. So tell them what you want. In a price negotiation, you want to anchor high, you want to anchor first. If you know what you want, go a step or two higher. This was the information that helped one of my clients secure, an offer that was hundreds of thousands of dollars more than what she was making in the current job. She decided to anchor for 40% more than what she was making. And so, in that job offer, when you're getting recruited, you have a lot of leverage, and as long as you can substantiate what you want with that value statement we discussed earlier, you can anchor high. Anchor high because the only way is down in a negotiation. You create wiggle room for yourself. In general, however, recruiters will tell you that when you negotiate, when you go to a new job, usually 15 to 20% higher than your total compensation is what you can reasonably aim for. So find out what you're making, calculate the benefit, the perks that you have of your current job, that is your total compensation, and then add 15 to 20%. Okay. So I have another script for you. Given my skills and experience, I like to be compensated at high end of the market range, which my research shows to be $100,000 in Boston area. So this is an example of how you can anchor for what you want by backing it up with market research. Market research, came up over and over again in my discussions with CDFI women leaders, that is how you prepare, that is how you set yourself up for success. Find out what the going market range is. Ask for the high end, because you're really good at your job, aren't you? So of course you should ask for the high end, because the quality you're bringing is high end. Find out what is the going market range, use that research to substantiate your ask, and be very specific. If you give a range, the bottom number will become your starting offer. That is what happened to me. Remember at the beginning of the discussion, I told you I found out I was making 50% of the going range. I thought my minimum salary requirement was just going to be a number that they pay more on top of, and no, when I gave them the minimum salary requirement, that became my starting offer. So if you give a minimum salary number, make sure it is the number you want or higher. Anchor high, anchor first. If you give a range, the bottom number will become the starting number. So set a higher range, or just give a very specific number. Okay, so I want to hear from you. We talked about mindset, we talked about mental primes, we talked about communication strategy, we explored these very specific scripts, and I explained the thought process behind them, the research behind them. I want to hear from you now. You have experience in negotiating, you have experience in the workplace. So what have you seen or experienced in your career to be a definite no? So Hannah, would you like me to address questions now?
We've had a couple come through. It's up to you if you want to address them now. There's one regarding reluctant, I guess, negotiation partners, and then there's one regarding negative reactions. Do you see those two?
Yeah, okay. Good question. How do you recommend handling someone who is reluctant and may want you to go through hurdles, I guess, to prove yourself, especially toxic environment, personal vendetta? Excellent question. So if you encounter somebody who is reluctant to negotiate with you, ask yourself, how might they be right? How might they be right in terms of wanting you to prove yourself? Sometimes, people in the workplace, your bosses, people you work with, give you feedback, and we don't want to hear it because it hurts our ego. We don't want to hear that we need to do things better. And sometimes that is exactly what we need to hear. Sometimes that is exactly what we need to address so that we can grow, so that we can advance, so that we can really demonstrate to leadership that we have the capacity and the potential to grow. And that's different from toxic environment, personal vendetta. So that's the first part of my answers. Ask yourself, how might they be right? Do I really need to address a very specific area in my personal development, growth? And is this something that I don't want to do, but something that will eventually help me grow? But if you answer that question, you say, I really don't care to, maybe you have to really ask yourself, am I in a good fit? Right? However, Having said that, there's sometimes people who are just really avoidant. They're negotiation avoidant, they're conflict avoidant, and sometimes we work for them. And so then this is the opportunity for you to become really strategic and think about, are there other people that they'd be more likely to listen to because they trust them? Or sometimes, you know, it's the reality of the workplace. There are people that you trust more, and people that you don't really trust as much as those people, right? So are there people who can put in a good word for you with this person who was reluctant? In other words, you don't have to be the person to make that ask. Could there be somebody else who can go to bat for you? Right? And this is a scenario that's described in Politically Savvy. The book talks about a real situation where an executive, woman executive, just happens to be, needed to get buy-in on this project, but people around her didn't trust her. They were reluctant to talk to her. So what she did was she got savvy and she identified people that she already knows and trusts, who had a relationship with people who needed to make those decisions. And so she had those conversations and she tried to align interest one by one with the people who could build that bridge for her. Okay. And so if you need to go through hurdles to prove yourself, yeah, again, I gotta ask you, what are those hurdles? Is there room for growth if I went through those hurdles? If I also, you know, reframe what it means to go through hurdles, like, because I don't know specifically, like, factually what they are, so I can't really address that. But and finally, toxic environment, personal vendetta. Like, I don't believe that environments are toxic. Like, when we go into those environments, they're not toxic. We feel toxic because we think a certain way about the people that we work with, about circumstances. We feel, you know, maybe frustrated, enraged, stuck, anxious. I mean, I'm thinking about my own experiences when I felt like I was in toxic environment. It was really because of what I was thinking, how I was interpreting those situations. So we got to get really clear, what is the factual, you know, circumstance, and then take it from there. And I don't know, so I can't address that for you. So I'll go to the next question. Are there things to avoid asking that trigger negative reactions? Yeah, absolutely. To answer this question, I want to say it's really how you make the ask that can trigger a negative reaction. Are you coming to the conversation and just making it all about me, me, me? You know, are you saying, hey, I'm getting married next year, I'm going on maternity leave next year, and I really need this promotion because I deserve it and I've done the work and I don't really care about, you know, anyone else. It's about me, me, me. You know, I've heard stories from people in my network, and they, you know, they've had people ask them for raises and they showed up to the conversation dressed inappropriately and making it all about them. Like, I'm going on honeymoon next year. I have this credit card debt and I need to pay it. That's why I need this raise, right? So that is definitely a way not to do it. Don't make it about you. Make it about the organization. You know, even if you want the raise and the promotion for you, reframe it so that you can address how you getting what you want helps the organization. How you getting what you want help drive the organization's mission and goals. That is the message that your boss needs to hear, because they're going to take that message and they're going to deliver it up the chain of command. So you're helping the boss help you, right? So you have to think about it from the organization's perspective. How does this ask help them? Brainstorm, come up with solutions. So that is definitely a way to avoid triggering a negative reaction, making the ask all about you. Okay. Another question, the standard for yearly raises is an increase for cost of living, making it difficult to ask for more. What do you think about going against precedent like this? So in order to ask for more, you would have to substantiate that you're bringing, an exceptional amount of value. How are you bringing value to the organization that exceeds expectations? How are you doing something that is beyond the normal expectations? Just because we want more money, it doesn't mean that we get it, right? We have to be able to articulate, demonstrate that we are bringing exceptional value to the organization. And so I'd say, yeah, it is definitely possible for you to ask for an increase that is beyond the annual cost of living. It is definitely possible for you to go against precedent. My clients do it all the time. I see people do it. And the way they do it is they become more valuable to the organization. They deliver more value to the organization. So you want to think about, how can I do that? How can I become somebody who is more valuable, somebody who is delivering exceptional value? So I hope that answered your questions. I hope you found this content useful. And thank you everyone for attending live and also watching the replay. I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn. I post on LinkedIn every day, insights, tips, strategies. You can also come to my site. I have additional free resources and a script on how to ask for a big pay raise. And thank you. Just again, we talked a lot. I talked a lot. There's a lot of actionable things that you can do, you can implement starting today, right? Like asking more open-ended questions. Try to ask more open-ended questions than, excuse me, than closed-ended questions. And also anchor, be very specific in what you ask for so that the other side knows how they can help you. Frame for value. That's the key thing. You got to make it about the value. How does what you ask for help them get what they want, right? And also become more politically savvy. Think about how you can reach out to people you know today. Like think about how maybe you can ask 3 people in your network. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this strategy I'm thinking about? What are your thoughts on, what would be a great title for this scope of role? Like, how would you go about that? Ask people people want to help you. People in your organization, maybe the people that you don't directly report to, but have some pull, ask them for help. And so again, I want to say thank you, and I wish you all the best. And I wish you great success in 2020.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Thanks for being here. You can see where to find Jamie online on the screen, and you can find CDFI Women's Network and local chapter updates on CDFI Connect and Facebook. I'll just take a moment to remind you that we have an open annual survey. It'll stay open to the end of the year. You can find the link on those sites, CDFI Connect and Facebook. And we are also wishing you good luck in your negotiations and a happy and successful 2020. Thanks again, Jamie.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, take care.